Welcome to part 2 of the real reason that we invaded Iraq, because you and I have been lied to our entire lives. In part 1, we talked about how an archaeologist discovered the ancient city of Uruk in modern-day Iraq, and then he discovered the tomb of Gilgamesh, and coincidentally, a few months after, we invaded Iraq. Well, buckle up, because this goes so much deeper than just his tomb. Now for this video, we have to go back to the days immediately following the flood, and this brings us to Genesis 10. Genesis 10 is the genealogy of Noah. Genesis 10:1 tells us that the three sons of Noah were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Down it says Ham had Cush, and then Cush had Nimrod. So Nimrod in the Bible is Noah's great-grandson. Now why am I talking about Nimrod? Because Nimrod is Gilgamesh. In the Bible, we learn that Nimrod established a very large kingdom. He was essentially the first king of the world, and it also says that he ruled over all of the other sons of Noah. Now, because of this, there were many different peoples that would write about Nimrod. It was their personal account of who Nimrod was. The Babylonians wrote about him, the Assyrians wrote about him, the Hittites wrote about him. It says even in Palestine, tablets have been found with this man's name on them. He was obviously the most popular hero in the ancient Near East, and of course, the Sumerians wrote about him in the Epic of Gilgamesh. I'm going to go back to Genesis 10 to find out about Nimrod's kingdom. This is Genesis 10:8, and it says up at the top, he began to be a mighty one on the earth. We'll go back to that verse later. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. Verse 10, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. That's southern Mesopotamia. From that land, he went to Assyria and built Nineveh, and there's more. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce them. Let's bring that verse to life a little bit. Here is a visual of Nimrod's kingdom. Down here, we have the Tower of Babel. We have Uruk, where he was found, or Erech in the Bible. The city of Ur, which is actually where Abraham was born, and then the land of Shinar. So pretty large kingdom. We're going to go back to Genesis 10:8 because it says he began to be a mighty one on the earth. This is the exact same phrase that God uses when he describes the giants in Genesis 6. So it says there were giants on the earth in those days and also afterwards. So God is specifically telling us that the giants, these demonic hybrid beings, survived the flood. When the sons of God came into the daughters of man and they bore children to them, those were mighty men who were of old, men of renown. The Greek origin of the words describing Nimrod are exactly the same as the Greek origin of the words God used to describe the giants in Genesis 6. It is worth mentioning that the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Old Testament, also says that Nimrod began to be a giant upon the earth. Now, Nimrod is talked a lot about in the book of Jasher, in the Apocrypha. And before anybody comes for me and says that we shouldn't read the Apocrypha, this is in the Bible, Joshua 10. Is it not written in the book of Jasher? 2 Samuel 1, indeed, it is written in the book of Jasher. The authors of the Bible are referring us to other additional sources so we can find out additional information. Back to Jasher, it says, and they brought him offerings, and he became their lord and king, and they all dwelt with him in the city of Shinar, and Nimrod reigned over the earth and over all the sons of Noah, and they were all under his power and counsel. And all the earth was of one tongue, we know this, and words of union, but Nimrod did not go in the ways of the Lord. Here's what's interesting. He was more wicked than all the men that were before him from the days of the flood until those days. And when you read about Nimrod, this guy was disgusting. He was wicked. He was perverted. He mated with animals all the time because he couldn't control himself. He was absolutely deplorable. Now, Nimrod actually wore the garments that Adam and Eve wore in the Garden of Eden. They were passed down to Noah, who kept them on the ark, and then he passed them down to his sons, and then obviously his sons passed them down to Nimrod. And it says here, he gave them those garments through the love for him, and Nimrod grew up, and when he was 20 years old, he put on the garments. And Nimrod became strong when he put on the garments, and God gave him might and strength, and he was a mighty hunter in the earth. Yes, he was a mighty hunter in the field, and he hunted the animals, and he built altars, and he offered the animals on them before the Lord. Now, there is no written explanation for how Nimrod became Nephilim, how he became a demonic giant. So this is my personal conclusion based upon what I've read. We know that Nimrod, when he was ruling, he did not go in the ways of the Lord. He was more wicked than all the other men. But in his early life, he was obedient to the Lord. And when he put on the garments from Adam and Eve, God gave him power and might. So I think that all just got to his head. I think as he aged, he started to abandon the Lord and he started to serve Satan. And what does Satan do? He takes everything that is God's and he twists it in his own perverse and evil way. So I think as Nimrod started to serve Satan, Satan used that power that God had given him and somehow transformed him into this Nephilim, into this demonic giant and a completely wicked, horrible, grotesque man. Now, because he was Nephilim, he had access to Nephilim technology. And this is where we get into the conversation of the Stargate, which is a demonic portal. This is where it gets kind of crazy. And I know this is going to be a lot to take in for some people, but y'all, the truth is that we live in a spiritual world. There are angels and demons all around us at all times. They're just in a different dimension than ours. So beings like Nimrod, who were almost 2/3 demon, had access to all of this demonic technology that was beyond what we could even imagine. Now, this brings us to the Ziggurat of Ur, which is located in modern day Iraq. Now, this is just an artist's depiction of what we think it might have looked like. This is what remains, and it was believed to have a Stargate buried underneath. This is pretty much what they look like. It's a portal to another dimension. And so all of the demonic rulers, in the ancient civilizations, they had access to all this. They had this technology, and God tells us this in the Bible. And so when that archaeologist found the tomb, found the city of Uruk, that's a red alert for our government, because there's a lot of fallen angels that rule this world, and they are in power in our world. I'm not going to say any more than that. So when they got word of Gilgamesh or Nimrod, they knew what they were looking for. But who was in their way? Saddam Hussein. Because Saddam actually thought that he was a reincarnated version of Nebuchadnezzar. In the 1980s, during the Iran-Iraq War, Saddam Hussein became obsessed with the Babylonian ruler Nebuchadnezzar. Saddam saw himself as a modern reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar, and to prove it, he spent millions building a massive reconstruction of Babylon. In addition, he actually tried to reconstruct the Ziggurat of Ur. So that means that he had the technology to the Stargate that was known to be below. Hussein either was able to get the Stargate working or learned something important from it, and Big Daddy America got concerned. The Bush administration recognized that Hussein had some very, very valuable, relevant information concerning the ancient history of the planet, either technology or text basically confirming this, and he was going to release this to the public. I think that was a big part of the reason why the Bush administration went into Iraq, to stop him from revealing this information and to also, of course, this is what I think, control it themselves. Now, all of this sounds crazy until you actually do some digging and you find on the CIA's website a project called Stargate. Now, this goes back many, many years because there are many Stargates all around the world. This document obviously is from 1993 and it covers the discussion of paranormal activity. The investigations described in this report involve a class of human capabilities generally referred to as parapsychological or paranormal phenomena. There are two general types, informational and energetic. There's a lot of weird stuff in this report, and it takes some time to read through, but you can find it yourself on CIA.gov. There's this story as well from 1928. You can find this on TikTok. This man was digging underneath Egyptian pyramids. He found a Stargate, went through it, and he actually brought people with him. Time was different, so he thought he was gone for only like an hour, but he was gone for 3 days. So when he went through the Stargate or the portal, he actually went back in time to when the pyramids were being built, and he saw UFOs carrying the stones for the pyramids. He saw giants, he saw aliens, he saw Nephilim, he saw all of it, and he said it was beautiful and lush and green. And he actually saw conveyor belts. I mean, they had electricity, they had power, they had technology back then from demons. And there's many stories like this actually. There are Stargates all over our world because our world was inhabited by demons and demonic technology, and we have pyramids all over the world. And it is no coincidence that America, a lot, part of the Grand Canyon is closed off. A lot of national parks are closed off to the public, and it's a huge reason why we are lied to, because it goes back to the Bible. So we all know what a Stargate looks like, right? It's a portal. And we also know that our government went into Iraq and took the Stargate that was under the Ziggurat of Ur. This is CERN.